The street was a river of darkness, the only sound the rhythmic clapping of her shoes against the cold, unyielding pavement. And then, impossibly, every streetlight surged to life, bathing her path in a golden glow. Isabella DeLuca paused, her breath visible in the crisp night air, eyes wide beneath the low pull of her woolen hat. Not a single car or passerby had been within sight, and yet, somehow, the entire street now glistened with a luminescence that felt as orchestrated as a Broadway debut. Isabella's fingers tightened around the strap of her worn leather bag, the familiar feel grounding her against the sudden paranoia creeping up her spine like a slow tide. To anyone else, she was merely a silhouette stitching the midnight streets. But to those who knew better, Isabella was a force tucked into layers of fabric, hidden behind a pair of deep-set, unassuming brown eyes. The world underestimated her in the same way it did a gentle drizzle easy to ignore until you were drenched. She worked most days at a bookstore tucked away at the city's edge, a claustrophobic nook that smelled sweetly of vanilla candles and ink. Eden's Books, with its mismatched shelves and low, oppressive ceilings, was Isabella's sanctuary, a place where stories breathed and whispered secrets as ancient as the walls they nestled within. Few knew Isabella's secret. Amidst the tomes and pages, she wove narratives of her own, stitching together lives and destinies with unerring precision. It was a dance of notes and musings captured on every available scrap of paper, slipped quietly into her back pocket among the relentless chaos of daily life. Even fewer knew Isabella's past. Her family's ties to the Verona family were an open secret to those within the underworld's whisper circles. Yet she kept to the fringes, her name barely a shadow against the formidable lineage. Her uncle, Maurizio Verona, a titan in a finely tailored suit, helmed one of the city's most powerful crime families. Yet Isabella moved through life like a well-kept secret, their essence untarnished by the shadow of the Veronas. The chill wrapped around her, sharp and biting. A distant echo of laughter sprung from down the street, followed by the faintest echo of tinkling glass, pulling her attention away like a lasso. She was halfway down Kensington Avenue and felt the curious weight of it gaze following her, felt it as distinctly as physical touch. A figure detached from the cloak of night, stepping languidly towards her with the confidence of someone who grew fat on fear. Smooth as silk, Vincent Marchesi emerged, his presence broader, his demeanor more menacing up close. He was the newest enforcer, one who never bothered with introductions when his reputation preceded. A mirthless smirk curved his lips upward as if every breath he took was a private joke. "You ought to be more careful walking alone, Bellissima," he murmured, the nickname leaving his lips like a caress filtered through smoke. Isabella feigned nonchalance, watching him under half-lidded eyes she had perfected in the tedium of long shifts. Her heart quickened its step, not skipping from affection, but from the silent tick of awareness. Marchesi was dangerous, a truth swathed in a tailored coat and effortless charm. "The world looks a lot brighter now," she replied lightly, gesturing to the sudden illumination with a careless sweep of her hand. He chuckled, the sound low and intimate. "I like my world to be visible. Makes it easier to see who doesn't belong." The edge in his voice didn't go unnoticed, painting in bright, brisk colors the stark divide between them. But Isabella stood grounded, her back straightened as her mind raced, a maze of thoughts that shifted with cautious calculation. She hesitated a moment before gathering herself. "We all belong somewhere, even if it's unclear exactly where in the dark." His eyes glinted, a predator's gaze in stark twilight. "I suppose you know that better than most, don't you? Growing up around the people you did." The remark stung a calculated strike below the girders of her facade. She steeled herself, refusing to flinch as her grandfather's legacy tangled with her current life in a way she both longed for and feared. Her gaze flickered, scanning for any possible escape, finding none. Marchesi filled the street like an eclipse, his presence casting shadows nothing could dispel, not even the sudden brightness overhead. But then she remembered something, an inkling she often buried beneath the responsibilities of daily life. Isabella wasn't without defenses. In her chest, like a heartbeat separate from her own breathing, Isabella carried the stories she wrote. The truths folded within fictional lies were as powerful as any pistol concealed beneath a coat. Her voice carried weight, and so she began her story. Vincent's attention didn't waver, though the coolness in his expression softened, brows knitting together ever so slightly as her tale unfurled. In the retelling of futures yet unwritten, Isabella recast herself as the invisible protagonista, realization blossoming with each softly spoken word. Her imagination painted vivid vignettes of power reclaimed, of the silent carving of destiny's path through an unmapped world. With eyes that glinted like polished onyx under the streetlight's sheen, she locked gazes with Vincent, seeing beyond the contempt he wore like a second skin. "Careful where you cast your light, Vincent," she whispered, her last words fraught with untold meaning. "You never know what monsters you might wake." A grin split his facade, equal parts intrigued and bemused, but the darkness in his eyes didn't dim it, lingered, challenging her, offering no comfort. And as Vincent retreated, his silhouette swallowed by the night, a single voice whispered from behind her, an unimaginable, ghostly echo. "I suggest you walk a different path next time, Isabella." The echo died on the breeze, leaving her standing alone amidst the flickering streetlights. Her heart pounded out a frantic rhythm, echoing the sentiments she felt rising in her chest, resolve and defiance. And so Isabella turned homeward, shadows her only company. But before all was lost to the echoes of her footsteps, she noticed a gleaming glint from the ground just where Vincent had stood, something small and metallic, catching the light as if awaiting her glance. Her heart skipped. A single brass key, burnished by everything unknown, awaited her hand, and that key shimmered, holding secrets yet untold. In the pallor of dawn, Isabella found herself standing where cobblestones met the awakening sun, her heart grappled by the spectral grip of the brass key she now held. It was cold to the touch and heavy, as if imbued with the weight of unspoken myths or perhaps unexplored territories. The moment was fraught with possibilities, each one veined with an unstated promise of revelation. The key felt alive in her pocket as she strode into the bookstore that morning, her mind a seesaw of curiosity and a cautious quietude. The rhythmic click of the ancient mechanical typewriter echoed in the back room, Eden's own soundtrack to the literary symphony contained within the walls. Amidst the soft glow of morning, the store was an oasis of book-laden calm. The air smelled faintly of worn paper mingled with the earthy aroma of freshly ground coffee from the cafe next door, creating a haven of sorts where Isabella could escape through printed portals. But today, the familiar rustle of pages was interrupted by the clinking of chimes announcing a visitor, a harbinger of her private dilemma, metamorphosing into a public engagement. Dominic Alessi, narrow-shouldered and draped in a wool coat that seemed a size too large, the gentleness in his eyes always belied the tales of his dissident past. "Morning, Bella." His words came wrapped beautifully, dissipated with warmth as he approached. The sight of him tugged a smile from the corners of her tired mouth. "Dom," she greeted, allowing the warmth of friendship to thaw the frost of her morning. But there, nestled deep within his murmur, was a hidden tremor, agitation. Dominic always had ears close to the ground, toes in waters less visible but equally dangerous. "Rough night last?" he queried, a question laced with implicit understanding. She chuckled, unable to mask the cloak of exhaustion she wore. "You could say that. The streets don't sleep." "It's not the streets I worry about," he retorted softly, eyes now as serious as the dawn-washed sky above them. Isabella sensed beneath his words a greater concern, a riptide disguised as calm seas. "What is it?" she asked quietly beneath the incense of their shared history. "You've been noticed," he said. In the bookstore, cozy and familiar, shifted imperceptibly. The walls seemed thicker now, each shadow more pronounced. Dominic rested his elbows on the desk, leaned into the intensity of his own narrative. "Verona's contemplating a position shift. Sees you as valuable." The words soaked between them like an oil stain, slow burning. Fears unspoken since childhood untangled, became free and wild things that danced across her face, a swirling storm of anticipation and reluctance. Their conversation ebbed into silence, their surroundings pulsating with mute witness. In the quiet, she felt a heat knot from Dominic's concern, but an unseen battle within herself. Family was never a simple construct, and history a chain half broken, half reforged upon her brother's death. "Every step is a choice," Isabella whispered. The conviction in her voice emboldened even her dwindling confidence. And I choose every sunrise to be my own. Dom exhaled a laugh, rich with relief. You always surprise me, Bella. He reached forward, his hand resting on the counter, with an offering of goodwill and truce to connection, forged through shared roots and branching paths. The afternoon unfurled with a backdrop of routine, yet a gentle simmering felt only by those truly entwined in its rhythm. With each page turned and customer helped, Isabella's mind wandered back to the mysterious Kia reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be relocked. By twilight, her resolve manifest and tangible as the dwindling daylight, she locked up Eden's books. The key lay heavier now, tied intimately with her heartbeat. Isabella's fingers wrapped around its cool surface, guiding her step beyond the street's familiarity. She glanced curiously toward the mansion that dominated the skyline, a testament to her lineage's ruthless grasp on power. Verona House stood timeless, its facade a guardian of secrets that lingered like ghosts beneath moonlight. The night beckoned her into its folds, drawing her towards a discovery veiled in uncertainty and shadow. Her trepidation gave way to a lucidity sharp as the blade of her choices. Each footfall resonated with a whisper of rebellion as she neared the heavy gates of her family's estate. With a click, the key surrendered its mystery. The gates yawned open with a groan, welcoming her into the heart of Verona's labyrinth of power. Inside, everything appeared shrouded in twilight's embrace, elegant yet daunting. The air was thick with a fragrance of heritage and echoing milestones. Footsteps barely audible on the polished marble drew her deeper into ancestral saga. A room at the hall's end glimmered with low light, drawn from a hearth fire casting elongated shadows, a masquerade of shapes that played across her vision in endless, shifting patterns. Maurizio stood there, his silhouette framed against the dark wood. The weight of generations rested upon his shoulders, his back a solid line brimming with an indeterminate strength she both revered and detested. "Welcome, Isabella," he intoned, voice a sonorous trail that reverberated throughout the labyrinthine hall. "We have much to discuss." The dialogue sat between them like a game unbeaten. Maurizio's eyes were twin orbs of shrewd brilliance and oppressive expectation. They assessed her, weighed her, found pieces of himself within her brow lines and quiet tenacity. As he spoke of alliances and obligations, a script perpetually rehearsed yet never perfected, Isabella laid bare secrets she had penned upon her soul with an unseen quill, narratives untold that stirred with a life of their own. "Family above all else," Maurizio declared, and the smile he wore was that of a conqueror reclaiming fallen lands. "Blood isn't everything," Isabella countered softly, yet with unwavering resolve. The clap of silence was immediate and deep, like the hollow void between stars, a weighty pause that spoke more than words ever could. Maurizio laughed then, an unexpected ripple. "You're bold, Bambina, more than I expected." And with that, the weight of their dialogue lapsed into muting comfort, a bridge across distance barely visible. It didn't sever the chasm of intrigue or redefine her reluctance, but it widened the narrative of their kinship threads tangling, weaving into something new. Yet all this did is form the groundwork for a pledge unspoken. As they parted, uncle and niece retreated to their private corners, and Isabella nodded a farewell, born of necessity and something more. Contentment wasn't real, but hopes fabricated through struggle bore weight in its stead. Her exit wasn't marked by ceremony, nor by the maw of revelation drawn wide, just understated fulfillment. But as she stepped back into the folds of night, Isabella's breath hitched. A shadow moved. Her eyes caught its briefness, fleeting but distinct, a warning, a promise, vibrant with ambiguity. She knew Vincent often lingered, that his figure melded with the night like whispers that interwove throughout silence. "You'll find the gate's secrets," came his voice, low and undulating, from behind the hedge beneath the prying starlight. Hope wove through her like laurel, and anxiety raced as pulse-bound companion. She paused, where lantern glow bled into darkness, and the future brooded unnervingly. The embrace of shadows welcomed her, and in the distance, a singular truth remained, unwaiting in the pages of stories yet written, in blood yet to stained hands. And then, with the last echoing call of the gate's metal kiss, she vanished into the night. Unanswered questions bore down with the weight of stars. Would the dawn bring daylight or bind her once more to shadows? A scream shattered the morning's tranquility, forcing Isabella's heart into her throat. Her eyes darted around the bustling market, searching for the source amid the cacophony of vendors and bartering patrons. The scent of overripe fruits mingled with the pungent aroma of freshwater fish, a vibrant assault on the senses. At first she dismissed it as the echo of a child at play, yet the shrill tone carried Penaiska harbinger of something awry. Isabella tightened the scarf around her neck, feeling the silken fabric of borrowed comfort, and moved towards the disturbance with a deliberate casualness. She slipped between stalls, her familiarity with these bustling streets masking her urgency. Each step echoed the beat of drums drawing warriors towards battle. A knot of people had gathered at the alley's mouth, dark figures silhouetted against the morning sun. Isabella's pulse quickened. She knew this dance of fear and curiosity all too well. In the center of this turbulent sea stood Gianni Russo, a man whose mere reputation could silence whispers. Tall, predatory, sheets of curly hair framing angular features. His presence was as commanding as a leopard pausing amidst the plains. Gianni was flanked by two men built like stone gargoyles defending an ancient cathedral. Their eyes flitted between the crowd, daring anyone to step forward against their silent minuteness. They were the ancients' thugs, Verona's enforcers, a reminder of power hidden behind shadows. And there, alongside Gianni, stood Vincent Marchesi, lean and composed, a sharp-edged smile slicing across his face. Isabella's stomach churned as Gianni reached into his coat and produced an object that seemed to draw every eye of paper folded in a tight square. It held the authority of the unspoken. "Gathered here, I announce changes," Gianni's voice boomed, resonating with an air that demanded compliance. The crowd rippled, undulating like reeds under a storm's whisper. Isabella kept to the periphery, her gaze sharp, darting through the throng towards Gianni's commanding frame. From her vantage point, the paper unfolded into a mappa-worn scrap dotted with markings and circles, crisscrossed with lines that wove a labyrinthine plot. "There are new territories," Gianni continued, his finger tracing pathways that opened new alleys of deceit, ambition, and the churn of power. "The Verona family marks these for the taking." His words held no comfort, only promises of conflict and whispers of using one's strength to keep hold of dominance. Her uncle's voice speaking through his lieutenant, shadow games masked in daylight. Isabella swallowed, the dryness of desert winds catching in her throat. Within this display of assertive agenda, Marchesi's eyes bored into the map, his roles flexible yet carved in firm resolve. He accompanied Gianni not just as an enforcer, but a pawn touched with autonomy waiting to play his hand. "Change necessitates sacrifice," Gianni concluded. "We all know this, and which sacrifices are required." His pause was deliberate, teeth bared into a wolfish grin. "Shall be determined." Isabella's skin prickled, aware she was observing more than political posturing. These moments conceived a future where boundaries would bleed into soil. When the crowd dispersed, the air stilled into a hushed tapestry. Isabella retreated into that inner realm of vibrating components, thoughts knitted and unraveled, seamless and chaotic. A market vendor caught her eyes as she passed, his gesture an invitation towards his wares. She declined with a dismissive wave, her focus inward, dissecting pieces of implications and expected pressures. The ordinary awareness of the world crept back as her mind resynced with the familiar rhythms of Bella Vista's commercials and largeness concealed in humble corners. But the key's weight had shifted unconsciously against her chest, suspending her thoughts between choices. But choice was momentarily eclipsed. They knew she knew. And while family offered an illusion of protection, it also meant expectation, like that of a hand forced past comforts. Her resolve wavered, surrounded by the titanic architecture of unseen expectations. Could her voice herald change, or become a whisper lost amid relentless wind? By noon, the musings had grown insubstantial as the afternoon sunlight joined Isabella in casting indistinct shadows over Eden's books. Isabella sorted through new shipments, her fingers easing familiar parchment and covers that carried tales beyond walls. When Dom discarded his coat over the store's chair and took his place beside her, Isabella realized another lifeline had woven its way into her day. "Did you hear?" Dom began, tucking his hands into his pockets. His voice was a calm shore against which fears lapped gently. "Of course," she replied, her eyes meeting his. In the dusty twilight of the store, his presence was a lighthouse marked with empathy. His nod was suffused with understanding, friends bound by common ground, even amid disaster's aftermath. "You there tonight?" Her laugh was mirthless but full, a note dusty with expectation yet unfamiliar to its own conclusion. "I have a story to attend to first." Dom afforded her a haunted smile, unshaven warmth dressed in fortitude. "If I don't see you, no paper trail." His illusions were muted, comfortably seated between jest and sincerity's echoes. As darkness encroached, Isabella stepped between fleeting shadows, led by a final inquiry, navigating a springboard of elemental choices. Unknown was the word's echoing refrain, its feeling deep and richer than surface insight. By the time she reached the mansion's gate, familiarity was a song's refrain within her scholarly resolve. Maurizio's study held not just family's lectures but velvet-lined secrets that whispered beneath its stillness. And there, from gilded frames and chilled carvings, her uncle awaited, worlds opened and shut in his synchronic, faint smile. Tonight, their conversations spotlighted uncertain futures with talons sunk into footfalls unmapped. Maurizio's eyes spoke of choices, his voice a compelling conductor waving amid symphonic chaos. For all outwardly agreeable veneers, Isabella detected society's hunter's craving for monumental equilibrium. "To understand is not necessarily to agree," he said, each frame viscous and calculated, heavy with wisdom or, in some regard, the kindly cruelty of manipulated truth. Isabella juggled each word, forfeiting pretense for threads revealing individual glimpses and monochromatic threads. She sat across, suffused by their contrasting reunions like dawn painting across a stone arch's centuries. Her breath caught, recalibrating frames to outsmart their somber brushstrokes. Choices thrummed beneath porcelain vertebrae, inborn and untethered. "This is within you, but not above you," Maurizio declared, the center of his gravity swinging perilously close. She heard wisdom circling thermal updraft, vibrations winging against daunting descents. Yet in illumination of choice, Isabella stood unflinching, her foundation ultimately solidified by family's foundations as much as its betrayals. "Then it is decided," she concluded resolutely. Out into the courtyard she stepped, hypnotic air caressing uncertainties. Isabella vowed to press towards the unseen valley with a beat as ancient as time and new as courage. As stars compiled their configurations above in patterns, determination mapped fate's hands anew and void from Cheshire ambitions threatened to encircle the night. But the cricket's thrum, the persistent rhythm of life, reminded her once more that stories seen weren't always received. Her eyes followed Vincent's silhouette under moonlit lace, tracing certainty like footsteps near ancient doorways. With precision, he extended his hand toward her, holding another key mute, glistening in faint light, leaving only unspoken questions in its place. "I imagine this one will unlock far more," he said. The shadows cinched tighter, outreach rendered soundless, like submerged, mindless whispers through lengthening dusk. A sliver of light glinted off its serrated edge, illuminating paths yet untouched. The future's weave hinged upon that gleaming uncertainty as two threads intertwined within darkness, awaiting whispered Odyssey's opening sentence. Isabella hesitated, grasping destiny's sharpened script within her palm and wondering where tales untold might lead. Climax. Vincent's fingers closed around Isabella's hand, sturdy and sure, a gesture fragile with trust amid swirling uncertainty. The gleam of the new key mirrored the daring light in his eyes, both holding secrets waiting to be revealed. Yet, it wasn't the pull of adventure or defiance that immobilized her. It was something wrought deep in the undercurrents of silence, a pause reborn from the echoes of fate. It was a promise lush with the thrill of uncharted paths whispered in the depth of night where destinies refracted from the gleam of stolen light. Isabella shivered, the cool air prickling her skin like the memory of a lover long departed. Her breath mingled with the crisp night, forming translucent clouds that hung momentarily in the ether before dissipating. Before them, the mansion cast lengthy shadows that reached like fingers in the moonlight, shadows accentuating the Gothic grace of Verona House. Isabella's hesitation was a promise unbroken, standing on the precipice between unfathomed choice and ancestral duty. Vincent remained a silent guardian, an unlikely conspirator, skillful with both blade and eloquence. His presence brimmed with danger, yet was tender, like twilight's embrace, dynamic and constant, an opposing force that neither repelled nor attracted but coexisted in harmonic tension. With a nod, Isabella accepted the key, feeling its weight settle like a tangible secret against her palm. Purposeful silence enveloped them, the Verona legacy looming above with all its oppressive grandeur. Few understood the silent language between them, a dance of power and frailty masked in silence. "Are you ready?" Vincent inquired, his voice low, as if attempting not to disturb the tranquility binding them. She looked at him, really looked and saw complexities written in stark lines and shadow. But inside him lay unchanged truths crafted by deception and the aim to survive, perhaps the only element that truly tethered them. Once this key opens the gate, there's no containment for possibilities, Isabella thought. Yet the thought bolstered her resolve, a rippling tide against which all doubt would struggle. "I've known nothing else," she replied simply, eyes reflecting a burgeoning determination that surged within. The air around them thickened into a hushed anticipation, Vincent's expression akin to an artist's last glance over a masterpiece before unveiling it. He offered her a grin that lit moments between secrets, their forlorn world stitched with fragile beauty. "This is yours, then," Vincent said. As delicately as a bird unfurling its wings, Isabella took the key gatekeeper of hidden fates and turned towards the mansion, bridging paths unseen and relationships woven in shadows. Somewhere far within the architecture's bowels, a clock struck midnight, its chime a silent reverie shaping their space. The sound was haunting yet reassuring, marking a point from which narratives pieced back together, puzzle-like, intricate. Inside Verona House, the corridors were cavernously empty, their emptiness amplified by the sound of her footfalls, each step a sonorous echo in the silence. She ventured through halls saturated with familial echoes and promises, unspoken, yet inherent to her blood. Isabella ascended the spiral stairwell, her ascent as graceful as destiny's reach. The dim light cast an ethereal glow on tapestries depicting epic narratives steeped in ancient heritage painted across dust-laden canvas. Each step propelled her towards the precipice of decision, the keystone of her tale vibrantly reborn. When she arrived at the library, its expansive walls lined with books bound in memories and whispers, a memory resurfaced, a childish wonder lost along life's trajectory, yet not forgotten. There, clothed in nostalgia and fractured light, she saw her father's reflection in her gaze, a reminder of ambitions and promises both beckoning and fraught. She paused, the sight almost violently tender, her heart contracting momentarily under waves of unbridled emotion. In the dim corners of the room, scattered papers suggested Vincent had already put a story in motion, trails of witnesses observed only by shadows. A map lay unfurled across the room's wooden table, both an enigma and a cartographer's treasure. Vincent followed closely behind, leaning against the doorframe, a sentinel beneath ancestral lineage's scrutiny. His tranquility belied the peril bubbling beneath polished veneers. "In light and shadow, Isabella," Vincent began softly, "secrets are merely truths waiting their chance to be seen." She carefully moved toward the map, heart fluttering with the wild energy of an impending storm, not wholly understood yet tantalizing in its chaos. Tentatively, she traced her fingers across the parchment's textured surface, bringing forth labyrinthine lines connecting networks of power, threads converging into an entrepreneurial empire poised for ascension. Bound by allegiance yet stretched by ambition, she contemplated. Vincent joined her, standing an arm's length apart, their proximity exuding unspoken camaraderie designed to fracture fragile boundaries. Her mind raced, digesting the evidence of concentration that Vincent's hands had crafted, the world they both sought to challenge. "Then," Isabella continued, raising her eyes to meet the intrigue and resolve in Vincent's gaze, "all this must lead somewhere worthy of the sacrifice involved. Their conversation was interrupted by the disturbance of reality stirring on its axis. In that hushed moment, the library's door creaked open only slightly, signaling a change that hovered intangibly yet as concrete as the walls. Maurizio's shadow fell against the doorway, authoritative and harboring secrets older than Verona might surmise. It seems I have walked in on a discussion fit for architects of change, he mused, his voice a riddle that allowed no easy answer. Isabella tilted her head, a smile playing around her lips, their mere exchange an artfully rendered dance companionable in its seductive miscellany. Nothing plans for stability quite like tested passions, she responded with deft fluidity. Maurizio's eyes flickered between them, unreadable, yet barbed with introspective projections. Never underestimate the allure of guided futures, he opined cryptically, before retreating back into the mansion's mystery-laden halls. They shared an embrace built of immortal thoughts, ideas stretching beyond tangible beginnings, and years that wrote more than them. And then, as they fell back into quiet steps, Vincent called after her. "You'll see," he intoned meaningfully, whispering through a hint of assuredness. Issa stepped in shadows and steps languid, while ahead of her Vincent lingered. Both of them understanding rapidly the implications both profound and subtly riotous. "Promise-driven," Isabella murmured under her breath as realization fused within her softened being. She glimpsed resolution in her heart, charted beyond. In the house's turmoil and hidden truths, amid vistas in turmoil, she imagined fresh pen strokes chiseled into ember-traced shadows yet aglow. The uncertain yet bittersweet magic of borrowed time sustained her weightless, transcendental, like stories yet drawn to see dawns anew. Beyond the trappings of linear time and enigma, Vincent beckoned with an enigmatic gesture, the future writ within the gleaming edge beneath unbounded skies. She breathed deep and exhilarating as words written over silence's parchment glistened anew under fate's light. And so Isabella exhaled, releasing too long-held anticipations and crafting folklore shimmering in the distance, a poignant intersection. At the cusp of disappearance, her voice alit in sudden vividness. "These gates tell not their secrets," she whispered, a profound urgency aligned with understanding. And with that, Isabella carried forward into the unknown. Upon her departure, Vincent's solitary silhouette remained, etched beneath the hulking skeletal remains of the mansion its soul, undulating enigmatically through mist. In the breach beyond timeless secrets masked in romance and ancestry, Isabella ventured purposely, her spirit alive with unwritten chronicles on the cusp of tomorrow's dawning. Thus unfolded possibilities yet unexplored, through chapters rife with promised futures penned by gleaming shadows woven into memory's filigree. Through adventure, over thresholds trembling at destiny's benediction, sealed with faintest smile, a redeeming sigh, resilient in journey forthcoming. And so, from lips trembling through a whisper, emerged their final utterance, before night's ink divided the dawn once more. Beneath the shadows, never forget the price that loyalty exacts is paid by the light. The room was spinning like a carousel, blurring into chaos as Alessandro staggered back, clutching his bloodied nose. The tavern's dim lanterns cast long shadows across incredulous faces, and disbelief rippled through the air like a physical force. Isabella stood her ground, her fist still clenched, heart pounding like a war drum in the silence that followed. Her mind raced with adrenaline and defiance. She had never expected to take such a stand, least of all against Alessandro Verona, her uncle's formidable consigliere. The scent of spilled wine and fresh oak enveloped her senses, mingling with the iron tang of blood from the brief scuffle. Isabella was not the kind to be underestimated, a fact now glaring under the scrutiny of those who still underestimated her strength. Her eyes, usually warm and softened by the love of books, were steely and sharp, like flint striking against stone. The whispers started immediately, weaving through the room as people reeled from the shock of what they had just witnessed. Despite the blaze of triumph in her chest, Isabella felt acutely the shift in atmosphere. She thought of the stories she loved, where heroines triumphed over adversity, not seldom through brute force, but wit and will. Yet here she was, stealing the narrative, not in ink, but in actions that left trails for the world to interpret. Alessandro, unbowed, unimpeachable in appearance, even in this moment of raw vulnerability, slowly lifted his head, eyes narrowing through a sheen of pain. "A brave display for the daughter of Verona," he uttered, his voice dangerously soft, like the calm before a storm. His implication was a venomous barb, intended to remind Isabella of her bloodline and the expectations that dripped from it like rain from a cracked gutter. Expectations she had no intention of fulfilling in the traditional sense. But Isabella held her ground, refusing to be shaped by the molds others had cast for her years ago, in hushed conversations behind closed doors. The tension in the room coiled tighter, each heartbeat a thunderous echo. Isabella's role was expanding, filled with a power she both revered and feared. The people watched, some with admiration, others with suspicion. After all, the world of the Veronas was built on both revered blood and ruthless cunning. Alessandro, rising to his full imposing height, wiped away the blood with the back of his hand, his demeanor a masterwork of composed fury. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze icy and dissecting. "I expect nothing less from a Verona," he continued, his voice like a blade scraping against stone walls. "Yet I wonder if you understand fully the path you walk, Isabella. Recklessness isn't in our blood without reason." Silence fell again, heavy as night on war-torn lands, but this time it brimmed with the crowd's anticipation, a desire for disruption amid their monochrome lives. Isabella felt that weight, felt years of legacy pressing into her skin like embers embedded too deep to be removed. With renewed resolve, Isabella steadied herself. "I carve my own path," she declared, her voice steady, gaining strength as it echoed off the walls. Her hand briefly touched her chest, where the hidden Symbol pendant of her mother's, half the world believed l'ossuaire, rested beneath her clothes. A collective whispering ripple grew from the tiny act of defiance, and Isabella could almost feel the atmosphere shift a tide pulling towards something inherent, something incandescent with surprise. Suddenly overwhelmed, Isabella retreated from the circle of light, feeling eyes follow her retreat a departure as significant as a declaration. The tavern doors creaked open, the night spilling cool dark over her, a comfort after the headiness of confrontation. As she walked through the cobbled streets she knew and loved, Isabella allowed her mind to wander back to moments of innocence and how far she'd ventured from them. Her world was wrapped in shadows, wrapped in hues of navy and the soft murmur of the ocean against a distant shore. An internal voice murmured softly, suggesting caution, but it was distant compared to the roaring determination in her soul. The confrontation with Alessandro, the pivot towards an uncharted future, was but the beginning. Yet, as the city slept and she made her way through its secret veins, Isabella couldn't ignore the imprint of her actions. With one punch, she had crossed a line and commenced a descent into a story yet unwritten. Approaching the hidden edge of the town, where the winding path led into dark epics only a Verona could fathom, she paused to listen for intruders, but instead heard nothing but her own breath and the night alive with crickets and the trickle of water beneath the cobblestones. Within moments, she found herself standing in front of Vincent, whose eyes held that off-kilter brightness of someone who saw the chessboard unlike others. His presence was solid, a figure ruggedly cut from the fabrics of suspense. "You said goodbye to what they wanted from you tonight," Vincent stated, his voice low and threaded with acknowledgement that wrapped around her like velvet. Isabella nodded, the motion a simple admittance she never thought she'd utter. "Sometimes it takes something small to break something open," she replied. "You'll become a legend and a threat and ally worth the risk," he mused with a half-smile that threatened to undo her balance, his gaze piercing yet gentle. And upon receiving her nod, he tossed her yet another keynote brass this time, but wrought from obsidian, as dark and impenetrable as the night sky. The shift in destiny rode invisible, carried in the habitual creak of key and lock, a sounding that symbolized futures intertwining with intentions quiet yet potent. "Guard this carefully. Not every lock opens with strength," he added cryptically as she slipped it into her pocket. Together they walked through the shadows, his steps matching hers, beat for beat, the thrill of new paths matched only by the effervescent promise of stories yet to be forged in light and understanding. Their journey took them deeper into the unknown territories of night impossibility waiting just beyond the next horizon. Isabella felt more alive than ever, moving through the world with all its tales yet untold. A villa loomed ahead, not Verona House, but another bastion of power forgotten by the annals due to a fall not yet named. And as they paused upon its threshold, Vincent turned to her, holding her gaze in a moment heavier than words could express. A fresh breeze wove between them, carrying with it a shard of hope delicately nestled in the night's embrace, as he whispered, "Do you feel the story's breath on your neck?" The simplicity of the question remained veiled in mystery's embrace, and Isabella smiled, sensing untold potential writ in Vincent's eyes and mirrored in the world at large. A new understanding settled over them, broader stories hidden beneath today's hushed conversations. Yet even as they inked their promises, the story's upcoming chapters remained vibrantly alive, waiting to reveal themselves amid silence. As they crossed the Axiom's threshold into a world tangled in past narratives and intentions, Isabella paused, feeling the intricate clockwork of moments she was now part of spinning without cessation, interlacing destinies written under shadowy skies. She knew the lives she touched were on the brink of upheaval, balancing on thin threads woven with inherent truths and beautiful ambiguities, all daring to be unraveled. And in that instance, the world seemed suspended a fleeting equilibrium on the verge of twilight revelation. Above all, Isabella sensed that key unknown, residing where stories long to unfold beneath surface waves. In the hush of lingering expectations came the foreboding, shadow-named yet tangible, that lay swathed in the arcane tapestry of her soul. And in the quiet drama of such a Stanislavian society poised between histograms of power and love, a new plot called. One last glance passed between Vincent and her, replete with understanding forged in whispered realms, before she turned away reluctantly. Then, through the veil of silence, the air whispered a single line, its meaning unraveling an ambiguous dialogue to punctuate her journey forward. "You'll find the door at dawn," the wind seemed to promise, leaving Isabella at once expectant, embraced for whatever change the dawn might bring. "Where are you going, Isabella?" The voice sliced through the thick veil of sleep, dragging her consciousness back from the depths. She sat up abruptly, her heart racing like a tempest. The room was dim, save for the pale fingers of moonlight grasping through the blinds, illuminating creeping shadows that danced on the walls. Her breath caught as her eyes adjusted, and there, seated at the foot of her bed, was the ghost of a memory, her brother Matteo. The world had underestimated her family, but Matteo had always been the unexpected star that burst into the frame, all energy and defiance. His laughter had once enveloped her like a cherished cloak, and now here he sat, enveloped in a specter's glow, a fragment of a shattered past. "Matteo," she whispered, fear mixing with disbelief. The imagined scent of his favorite cologne, a heady mix of cedar and citrus filled her senses, pulling her back to countless memories wrapped in warmth. "Where are you going, Isabella?" he repeated, this time softer, as if the very air could steal away the words. His presence was a haunting comfort, stirring the stillness of the night. But Isabella blinked, rubbed her eyes, and the vision faded. Her mind was playing cruel tricks, conjuring shadows from the heart's deepest reservoir of grief. Matteo was gone, turned to dust and whispers, leaving only scars that echoed his loss in the most unexpected moments. Exhaling the breath she didn't know she was holding, Isabella swung her legs over the side of the bed, the worn carpet threading through her toes like the embrace of an old friend. During the day, Isabella was a silhouette unassuming, overlooked by design. In the ebbing night, however, she became whole, a tapestry woven with remnants of courage and threads of rebellion against a destiny she refused to claim. Her residence was humble, book-filled haven where titles sat like solemn guardians of knowledge. An encaustic tile mural she and Matteo had painstakingly crafted lined the study wall, every shade a reminder of brotherly bonds unsevered by time. Isabella dressed quickly, each movement deliberate, orchestrating the ritual of preparation with precision honed by countless sleepless nights. The Kia silent companion glittering ominously in the quiet shadows rested on her desk, its metallic surface glinting under the moonbeams like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Her fingers brushed its cold surface, imbuing her resolve with steely determination. Tonight marked the beginning of yet another chapter in her saga, a new path meandering through the complex tapestry of Verona's Mafia web. Despite the growing tension that thickened the very air, her spirits soared with each heartbeat. The streets below were ghostly quiet, offering no comfort in their eternal vigil. The city, at the brink of dawn, lay washed in shades of indigo and cobalt, still wrapped tightly in slumber. Yet every shadow seemed to carry secrets, clinging to walls and eaves, silent, waiting. Isabella slipped out, footsteps echoing soft and sure, as though the city itself kept her secrets safe. Navigating the cobblestones was a dance she had perfected, her stride purposeful amidst the world ever in motion, transitioning seamlessly between light and dark. As she rounded a corner, her heart slipped, a stone into water. Standing not far ahead was a small cluster men, potentially dangerous, their countenance sending rivulets of awareness slithering down her spine. Her wardrobe, always unassuming, now felt inadequate against the rising tide of adrenaline. "Look who we have here," one called, voice draped in mockery and malice. He was muscular, with a grin that spoke of climates far warmer than this. As they closed in, Isabella felt the air grow charged, the situation rapidly deteriorating. She recognized them, henchmen of a rival faction encroaching Verona territory embossed with arrogance. Circumspect but unyielding, she calculated her response, acutely aware of the folly of reacting with violence, knowing they bore witness to a calm facade. "Isabella De Luca," another spoke, his tone heavy with sarcasm. "Fancy seeing you here." Her spine straightened with invisible force. "It's a free city last I checked," she replied, her tongue laced with the bite of defiance. The leader chuckled low, extending his arm, a gesture of misplaced camaraderie. Yet underlying was a challenge only the astute could perceive. "You've got something belonging to the wrong hands," he continued, something tiger-like in the sudden movement of his gaze. "Fancy making it ours?" Every fiber of Isabella resisted temptation. Words were negotiated. "Not interested," she asserted firmly, eyes flicking confidently over the group. The leader surveyed her a moment, contemplatively twisting his lip beneath the bristle of a matching scar. "Suit yourself," he replied, tipping an imaginary hat, allowing her passage. But as they walked past, one kicked over a trash can, the clatter breaking the city's tranquility, a silent promise unspoken, marking her. The night swallowed her again, the disturbance of solitudes, marking an inkling of turmoil, readying to escalate. She moved on swiftly, rising tension vibrating the atmosphere around her, but she carried more than a veneer of composure. She bore resilience inherited from days of being underestimated. Nearing the safety of the bookstore's neighborhood, the familiar Century of Edens welcomed her. It was refuge and revolution, the heart that beat in pace with her own. Dom awaited by the threshold, his form a calming constant beneath the solemn arches. He remained a lighthouse, steering her away from despair's big shore. "Bun, you're late," Whitey said, bemusement weaving through his voice. She shot him a look, their conversation unspoken, conversation framed with weathered familiarity. "Ran into distractions," she shrugged, easing into the atmosphere of sanctuary quietly infused by freedom's ethos. "You found more answers tonight?" he asked, acknowledging the quiet underpinnings of her actions with humor nestled along each line. She nodded, the emotions lit beneath the surface flickering in dim light. "Only more questions." Their bond spoke softly of journeys they had traversed, each darkened path lined with mutual understanding. Their evening progressed under a watchful starlit canopy, scouring the horizon of possibilities. A mosaic of memories unfolded, each talk spun with laughter, warmth, reminding how threads unravel and intertwine. The key's weight pressed against her, each day etching new chapters for untold tales sketched quietly below storied skies. Before he departed, Dom touched her shoulder gently with warmth and sincerity. "Keep your eyes on the horizon, Bella." And with that, a quiet sphere of power unfurled in Isabella's soul, layered with hope in the ties that bind. A palpably magnetic rendering of protection pulsed forward. Isabella watched as the stars hung suspended in the night's embrace, their brilliance accentuating chapters yet unwritten, dreams yet unpursued. Now alone, the night air braided with doubting whispers, she paused outside the shop to breathe in the alley's cold air, intermingled with potential's fragrance, and heard them. Footsteps too hushed to belong today. She froze, her breath a fading mist. It was inexorable yet inevitable, a sense of being woven into the midnight tapestry she dared to alter. And through the quiet night's cadence, a stranger's hand reached out, clutching her sleeve, eyes pleading between whispered promises, leaving Isabella with but one indelible line etched into her memory. Run. They're coming. The wind carried a whisper of rain as Isabella stood at the edge of the pier, the water below a dark, churning abyss. Her heart beat with urgency, perfectly in time with the rolling thunder in the distance. Each breath was crisp, filled with salt and foreboding, an unraveling tapestry beneath the overcast sky. Isabella's fingers tightened instinctively around the key nestled in her coat pocket, its weight a familiar anchor displaced by the heavy tides of uncertainty. The city loomed across the bay, sprawling and silent under a veil of fog. Every streetlight seemed a watchful eye bearing witness to the night's unfolding mysteries. Her silhouette, stark against the watery gloom, was unassuming yet fraught with quiet strength, an antithesis to the chaos swirling upon within. She was the same Isabella known among the Verona ranks as a shadow who moved unseen through the tapestry of criminal power, her presence largely dismissed, only now finding her footing among titans. Footsteps approached, their echoes dull against the concrete dock. Isabella turned slightly, her senses finely tuned to shifts in the atmosphere. The figure who joined her was Vincent, slipping from the obscurity of shadows, every inch the confidant crafted by circumstance. They say the storm will break soon, he said, a statement more prophetic than meteorological. His gaze followed the distant arcs of lightning splitting the horizon, and then returned to meet hers. Let's hope, Isabella replied, her words layered with the tension that undercut their exchanges. For weeks, her resolve had been tested, Vincent's enigmatic guidance a constant in a world that shifted beneath her feet. She had survived being underestimated, rising above the expectations of the Verona legacy and choosing paths of her own making, illuminated by truths she alone owned. Tonight, however, danger loomed tangible, held aloft by currents beneath the surface, whispering future reckoning. The city's alive with whispers of change, Vincent murmured, and his words hung in the salted air like spectral warnings. The Innovari Alliance, they're moving faster than anticipated, taking territory where we least expected. Isabella nodded, her eyes distant, absorbing the glow of the distant city and the gravity of his words. Innovari, the newly risen rival, had capitalized on the fractures within the Mafia scene. Power struggles shift, she thought. Opportunists rise. Every move has a counter, she said, invigorated by a spark of rebellion she had come to embrace. We can still decide where our pieces fall, Vincent replied, his tone a quiet dare. We need to discover the door the key unlocks. He paused, and what lies behind it? A wave of pressure threatened to erode her confidence, but she resisted, breathing deeply, drawing strength from determination born from years of being unseen. The thing about being underestimated is that no one guards against one's victories, Isabella mused. Yet the pier echoed solitude, except their two forms amid the concert of rain and wind gathering force. Then let's make the move, she affirmed, swallowing the nervous thrill laced with fear that accompanied her words. Both turned to leave the pier, steps quickening as the rising storm invigorated with its raw energy. The specter of purpose now illuminated their path, directing them back toward the intricate cityscape where opportunity lay hidden amongst grim alleys and palatial ruins. The bustling street seemed both alien and familiar, the aroma of fresh coffee and street market spices accompanying them as gentle reminders of normalcy threading through days drenched in turmoil. As they moved farther into the labyrinth of buildings layered with history's weight, the rain began in earnest. Fine droplets splattered against pavement and rooftops, synchronizing with the pounding rhythm of Isabella's heartbeat. Turning a corner, their path intersected with growing tensions. They could see, up ahead, figures cloaked in rain-streaked shadows, ever vigilant, the rival faction's operatives who regarded the surrounding territory with intent. Violet, their leader known for keen intelligence, held sway within these streets, a force both aware and calculating. As Isabella approached, their paths converging, something sparked, curiosity, and with it, recognition. Well, Isabella de Luca, Violet said, her voice a melodic cascade amid the rain's percussion, it seems you wander through shadows much like I do. Isabella met her gaze, eyes a mirror storming recognition and implicit challenge. Sometimes the shadows reveal more than any light, Isabella replied, a hidden smile resting at the corner of her lips. Violet nodded, their standoff both riveting and subtle, charged not with antagonism but understanding. Though bound to disparate allegiances, Isabella and Violet shared a language unspoken, where subtext held the true meaning. But Isabella knew the time was not for confrontation but alliance. In a sudden swell of wind that carried with it whispers of ancient promises, Violet held out her hand. Perhaps we walk together through this storm. Isabella considered, poised at a nexus, each decision teetering between light and dark like a blade. She saw in Violet the adversary unchallenged, yet also the ally unclaimed. As long as our purposes align, Isabella said eventually, placing tentative trust in destiny's intricate designs. Vincent sighed softly, an exhalation of relief, and the three stood momentarily united against the night. They moved as one through the veritable maze of side streets, navigating through memories softened by rainfall, yet charged with intent. Isabella could feel the promise of resolution building with each step, the key a solid presence resonating with heat against her chest. As they reached the hidden entrance to an underground chamber, known only to those with allegiance, Isabella's resolve crystallized. Somewhere in these caverns of the forgotten lay a future uncharted, shaped by hands that deftly maneuver stories unfinished. Together they entered the storied halls, echoing sanctuaries where shadows danced and histories echoed. Light, though sparse, revealed patterns engraved through time, stories steeped into stone and blood. The room expanded beyond perception, its walls whispering of dust-laden legacy, and as Isabella stepped further into its embracing vastness, the key sublimated into more visions of paths untold divided by intention's unwavering course. Vincent stepped back, signaling her freedom to reveal what the chamber contained, a sanctuary of dreams and ambition yet to be voiced. With a deep, calming breath, Isabella reached to the corner of the space where a concealed lock awaited her touch, imbued with cosmic quiet. As the key turned, the mechanism clicked, resonating within the stillness unbroken by time. The door slowly opened with an ancient groan, revealing a gathering place vibrant yet silent, filled with the possibility that defied expectation. It was here decisions were made, marked by the luminescent weight of dreams nurtured and left to blossom. Realm where Isabella now stood, poised to redefine what it meant to reign from shadows. It was here, she knew, future moments intertwined with past offerings, and clarity found its roots amid chaos ever expanding. As Isabella stepped gracefully forward, the chamber seemed to breathe alongside her, embracing its enigmatic role in the tangle of destiny's weave. But through clarity came dissonance, a pulse in the air, a shiver of awareness stretched between worlds. Violet, watchful guardian, smiled with understanding. "It begins, Isabella," she declared softly, truth lingering beneath each syllable. And there, in the gravity of silence, Isabella acknowledged the harbinger of dawn. With a quiet nod, she turned, each footfall a promise cradling the echoes of potential. But as their time converged, shadows shifted with insight's heavy load, a distance paradox vanquished by revelation. From her pocket, the pendant half forgotten until now fell, a beacon in the dim echo of their sanctuary slipping from its fold. "Cliffhanger, in the tranquility of understanding now clear," she whispered. "The cycle begins anew, the line resonating in the depths of memory's infinite archive." The sharp clap of a gunshot sliced through the air, piercing the silence as if tearing reality apart. Isabella's heart seized, her pulse quickening to match the symphony of reverberations that echoed off the brick walls. Within the alleyway, where gunpowder and shadows mingled as allies, the atmosphere was electric charged with potential violence and the raw, tense expectation that held all present on edge. Isabella had never imagined herself in such a scene, where danger suffused every breath and whispered stories seemed to spring to terrifying life. She stood, seemingly small and unimposing, her figure obscured by a long coat that billowed around her like a shroud. Yet beneath the fabric lay a mind sharp as the edge of a blade, thoughts weaving an intricate tapestry of cunning unseen by those who underestimated her. The marketplace around her, a tapestry of colors and scents, was a world apart from the threats that lurked beneath its vibrant facades. As merchants peddled their wares, the aroma of spices and freshly baked bread filled the air, creating an intoxicating mixture that masked the darker currents running beneath. But Isabella, with senses honed by necessity, moved through this chaos, her eyes seeing the webs of deception others ignored. Beyond the crowded stalls and the murmur of voices exchanging pleasantries and demands was tension. Whispers wriggled between crowds like elusive snakes, hints of escalating turbulence that wrapped her mind in uncertainty. The chilling shot she'd heard was not a random act but a deliberate mark on today's narrative, a stark reminder that peace in her world was as precarious as a tightrope walk over flames. Through the crowd's ebb and flow, her gaze met that of Johnny Russo, his countenance a puzzle, half concealed by shadows. An enforcer of the Verona influence, his reputation curled around him like smoke, occupying spaces with dominance and unyielding presence. If power had a form, it would be shaped by men like Johnny, as lethal as a serpent's strike, as silent as the night. "What happened, Bella?" a friend whispered urgently from her side. But Isabella's attention remained fixed on Johnny, sensing a broader game at play. "Not sure yet," she replied, the half-truth coating her words. Her voice, though steady, carried an edge of doubt, of vulnerability not visible to the naked eye. Gianni approached, his manner revealing the poise of a predator calculating its next move. "Isabella De Luca," he called, voice measured, missing the volatile edge it often carried. In a world where one's name carried weight, hers was less a name and more a shadow of its former importrailing from lineage both revered and resented. "Gianni," Isabella acknowledged, lifting her chin slightly, projecting confidence she was still cultivating. He came upon her, a specter draped in refined menace, eyes flicking between her and the clustered witnesses. "Join me," he gestured, offering neither choice nor refuge. In the narrow tunnel of their shared space, Isabella stepped forth, leaving behind vibrant humdrum and entering an arena she neither feared nor embraced, neutral ground where consequences and cognizance cohabited. There, under the archway that funneled light into shards of golden feathers, Gianni turned with deliberate slowness, marginally encouraging secrecy with every minute tilt. "There has been an incident," he declared. The words, an understatement, painted a picture of chaos Isabella couldn't see but imagined vividly, a vivid portrayal crafted in her mind's inner theater. "And within Verona's purview?" she ventured, prodding for details while treading softly over conversational landmines. His answering smirk harbored a faint flicker of amusement, an acknowledgement that she understood the stakes of this dance. Johnny's position was entrenched. However, Isabella remained an enigma, poised between visibility and the safety of obscurity. "You could say that," he answered finally, his smile retreating beneath the grim composure of authority. "You should let Maurizio know. We may have complications best dealt with internally." A pause, a timeline unstated. "Consider it done," Isabella promised, retreating into thoughts that spun with possibilities and silent potential. As she stepped away, her visage met Vincent's lurking form in the crowd, an ally or an antagonist, dependent on circumstances. His nod was barely perceptible, a silent conduit that transferred intent and reminders of undisclosed trials yet to be faced. It was then that Isabella felt the familiar pulse of anticipation, where reality diverged into paths carved not of choice but necessity. The truth, unyielding and patient, awaited revelation as her feet led her through winding streets, through thoroughfares haunted by life's unending light and shadow. Night's descent arrived like a curtain, veiling mysteries beneath its folds, each star a whisper of stories yet to unfurl. Her heart, resplendent with contradiction, waded through the sea of consciousness toward uncharted shores where expectation and fear held sway. Within the embrace of Verona House, everything felt charged, each step echoing premonitions. The marbled floors whispered tales as her silhouette graced them once more, a pilgrim in search of sanctuary. Maurizio awaited, pacing the confines of his study, each steady rhythm punctuated by thoughts long held under the surface tension of his skin. His expression, often inscrutable, now gauged her approach with the wisdom of eyes acquainted with Seer's foretelling. "Uncle," she greeted, the word born from habit yet landing with understated reverence. Maurizio's acknowledgement was measured, a nod carrying weight within the circumference of their lineage. Bella, he responded, his voice owning the space between them in strokes of echoing grandeur. You've heard myths beget truths tonight. Walls talk, Bella, in ways flesh dares not travel. Alliances and alchemy, Isabella thought, threads tighter than blood-rooted veins, fostering pacts more binding than paper and ink. A tableau of narrative swirled within her vision, ripe with intrigue and woven with intrigue's elaborate finery. Complications, she echoed from Gianni's parting quip, a single syllable, unfolding its wings to disclose the gravity of its presence. Maurizio observed her, eyes discerning, sifting through memory and held evocations. The tapestry winds its own web. Bella, he murmured, the script of their legacy engraved in the solidity of his gaze. We find strength even in shadow shidden, but never absent. In that heartbeat resided what folded beyond, the expression of anticipation dissected, new conflict shaping contours of the imminent. Isabella sensed the culmination, the orchestrated ballet where alliances shifted like sands of promise, futures concealed in the geometry of halcyon dreams. The price of perception, uncle paid in ink, in blood, Isabella intoned, a declaration softened by duality. Maurizio exhaled softly, the exhale fraught with memories embroidered in muted nostalgia. Remember always where you stand, Bella. It sculptures destiny's eventuality. It was, in its quiet manner, acceptance forged under burgeoning light, a relinquishment to the compositions staged across horizon upon slumber, only to awaken moments of enlightenment amid the fracturing. As they parted, mutual understanding dissolved through the shadows, faces lit more by metaphor than stark reality, where reverence waged silence. Isabella retreated, seeking solace through marble sanctuaries that guarded remnants of powerful awakenings. Her footsteps were singular, a gentle cadence of entity traversing narratives not embroiled in the blazing vigor of assertion, but warming to intent alone. Moon and midnight conspired overhead, their meeting solemn gaze punctuating decisions soon to be sealed. At Verona House's threshold, she paused, filled with certainty and the echo of thunder gathering distance, far beyond the gallery's cool embrace. The key, she murmured, the lullaby of twilight amidst the soliloquy of marbled history's gentle presence. Then, through the shroud of unfolding night's design, returned voices enveloped in time-bound chorus, somewhere beneath star-bounded tales. The clarity of precious dawn pledged a future, the glassy reflection of spirits bent not by force, but succored by free alchemy. Cliffhanger. In the crucible of choice, Isabella found clarity forming like mist across dim-lit histories, leaving her to whisper into night's vigilant echo. The path has spoken even as the shadows shift. The air was electric with anticipation, a celestial gust weaving through the gilded halls of Verona House, as Isabella De Luca faced her uncle, Maurizio, under the imposing grandeur of the family estate. The tension was palpable, each molecule of space vibrating with unspoken promises and hidden agendas. I saw them, she finally broke the silence, her voice firm and resolute as she held Maurizio's inscrutable gaze. The Innovare Alliance is moving in, and we both know how that story tends to unfold. Maurizio leaned back in his leather-bound chair, hands steepled under his chin, reminiscent of a meditative deity. The light from the opulent chandelier above cast fractured prisms around them, momentarily transforming the ancestral study into a kaleidoscope of history and legacy. Isabella felt the weight of every Verona before her. Some were intrepid conquerors, others clandestine tacticians, but all were tied by the bloodline pulsing through her veins. The scent of aged cognac and old leather surrounded her, mingling with the subtle dust of forgotten tomes lining the walls. They underestimate us, Maurizio stated, his gravelly timbre cutting through the air with the precision of a scalpel. As mighty pawns advance, so do kingdoms fall. But we are not mere pawns, are we? His eyes, two orbs of time-worn wisdom veiled in cunning, gleamed, daring her to rise beyond shadows. Isabella nodded, feeling the ever-present undercurrent of expectations stretched tight like sinew beneath skin. A myriad of possibilities flickered within her mind, a labyrinth of what could be in the realm of Verona strategy. The house was alive, echoing whispers of long-departed champions and sibyls. Each secret passage within its labyrinthine heart seemed to urge Isabella forward, to shed the guise of docility she had worn for too long. Her heart raced a duel between trepidation and the thrill of emerging power. She had always been an apparition in corners, underestimated, left free to observe undisturbed. But now she was a force unveiling, a presence carved from the silent, marbled corridors she knew intimately. Wrenching her gaze from Maurizio's penetrating stare, Isabella paced deliberately toward the study window. The sprawling gardens extended below, a geometric puzzle sculpted over 100 years, blossoming under the moon's silvery caress. "I have something," she declared, turning back to face him. "A solution." Maurizio's eyebrows arched slightly, the only outward manifestation of piqued interest. "Do tell." "A union with Innovare," she proposed, each word meticulously weighed, like the gentle cadence of a harpsichord. Silence fell, heavy and expectant, palpable tension enmeshed between candor and consequence. "And what of this key?" Maurizio probed, directing his finger toward the slim obsidian artifact peeking from her coat pocket. Isabella traced its cool edges, the emblem of her brother boiling in the core with untouched ideas, waiting just as ardently to be unleashed. It was the key to everything a cipher in a world constrained by locks. It was a symbol of her resolve, her desire to be more than a name scribbled in a ledger, skillfully maneuvering through life's multitudes without the burden of expectation. "It unlocks bonds previously unyielding," she replied cryptically, the truth hidden within layers of unvoiced potential. "An agreement with Innovare might just fuse our strengths." Maurizio laughed, a deep, resonant sound that resonated within the book-lined confines of the study. "You negotiate like an empress. It's no child's play on these grounds, Bella." Emboldened, Isabella held her uncle's gaze, unwavering in her commitment to her visions. The conversation turned over future intricate policies and relations until the deep hours of the morning, ideas cascading like a waterfall caught in moonlight. Each node on the map of influence intertwined, the ballroom of power poised, ready to blossom anew. As dawn's fingers broke the horizon, Isabella took her leave, her spirit buoyed by affirmation. While the rose hue of transformation continued to paint the house she called home. The antique grandfather clock in the hall chimed softly as she exited, each rhythmic beat marking time within the animalistic suspense that held them. Renewed resolve resonated within her, each muscled intention a stronghold from doubt. At the threshold, the future laid its promise before her, waiting for decisions to cement paths yet traversed. Narratives older than cities wound through the fabric of the decisions that loomed, waiting for dawn to finally illuminate their intended course. Her step lighter, she left the premises whose biting revelations only arm's length away. Beyond Verona House awaited change, carried forward by the whispering wind of city, on the brink of unknown absolvement, its streets poised to welcome her differently. And as Isabella strode toward the unfolding cosmos of unspent futures, she turned over the key once more in her grasp, feeling the gentle, final click as its mysteries aligned firmly in her mind. Her isolation underscored her power, a solitary chord linking realities, whose symphonic scores she was yet to compose fully. Once she paused beneath the lamplit canopy of Verona House's shadows, her figure equal parts anticipation and command. There she caught sight of Vincenta Harbinger, of opposing forces not destabilized by chaos but inspired by it. The calmness between them was horned by the effervescent rhythm of an emerging sun. A single question, intense in its simplicity, drifted across the night-brushed atmosphere as Vincent's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Are you ready to turn the key?" She twirled the key between her fingers, a small act that anchored her wandering thoughts amidst the looming chaos. The anticipation was electric as she prepared to dance with destiny unseen yet palpable, weaving through the charged whispers of Verona House. Her heart beat loudly in her chest, echoing the tension that flooded the room where her fate would be forged. The light through stained glass windows left prismatic patterns dancing on the marble floor, infusing the space with a celestial glow, an unlikely setting for a moment that felt so perilously close to divine intervention. Isabella stood before her uncle, Maurizio, whose presence commanded the room, his gaze resting on her with an intensity that rivaled the sun's. It was a silent challenge, a wordless invitation to rise beyond expectations, beyond constraints enforced by lineage. The Verona family's tale was etched in blood and shadow. Underneath the fragile eloquence of their conversations lay an empire built from whispered fears and cloaked promises. Isabella had grown accustomed to the dance of power, the delicate balance of authority and subversion. Now it was her turn to lead. With each second that passed, the air grew thick with potential, the walls bearing silent testimony to the turning tides. Isabella, dismissed as a footnote in her family's saga, now stood poised at the helm of a destiny she was determined to claim. Her uncle's eyes, so often reflective of cold calculation, now held a glimmer of challenge. He leaned back, steepling his fingers as if weighing the universe between them. "And you believe you can negotiate this alliance on your own terms?" His voice, though soft, demanded attention, melodic gravity. She returned his gaze, unwavering, the key's cool metal a promise of change against her palm. "This is more than just a negotiation," she replied, her tone steady, but carrying an undercurrent of unyielding resolve. "It's about redefining who we are." His chuckle was rich, rolling through the room like distant thunder. "Tell me then, what do you truly intend to unlock with that?" Isabella shifted, the map of her intentions unfurling in her mind's eye. She imagined the union, a bridge not of power over others, but one underpinned by mutual recognition, a promise forged in shadows, yet bathed in light. The Innovare Alliance represented a dynamic shift, an opportunity to reshape the boundaries that had long defined their world. But it required a deft touch, a delicate balance between ambition and caution. "A future," she answered finally, her voice a soft echo in the grand chamber. "This key represents choice, a chance to write our narrative anew, free from the chains of past grievances." The energy between them crackled, a silent testament to the shared understanding that transcended words. Maurizio, for his part, seemed to read between the lines, understanding the transformative power simmering beneath her proposal. Yet Isabella knew the course ahead was fraught with peril. Many would resist change, those who thrived in chaos, who nurtured vendettas passed down through generations like heirlooms. And what if Innovare refuses this union? What then? His query pierced through the moment like a swift blade, slicing through her optimistic veneer. Isabella paused, allowing her response to form carefully, each word weighed like precious metal. "Then we adapt. We find another path. One way or another, the future belongs to those willing to redefine it." Maurizio regarded her silently, a tapestry of thoughts weaving behind his inscrutable eyes. The destiny of their house lay at the crossroads, contingent upon choices that now rested squarely on her shoulders. The gravity of his nod was a sanction, an endorsement of her latent potential, the unseen spark now igniting into a burgeoning flame. "Very well, Isabella, lead us." Thus her course was set under the watchful gaze of shadows intertwined with destiny. She felt the room breathe anew, as if a pact had been sealed upon a shared promise. As she exited, intuition led her steps back toward the pivotal moment where she would present her proposal to Innovaria world steeped in the elegance of risk, gilded in possibility. The streets murmured with life, the city a living entity engaged in the art of perpetual renaissance. Every cobblestone alley whispered tales of triumphs and despair, echoes of choices that rendered their spectrum vivid under twilight's embrace. Scents of rain-soaked earth lingered in the air, mingling with the rich aroma of espresso brewing in tucked-away cafes. Her heart thrummed with adrenaline, a wild symphony that underscored her resolve. As she approached the meeting place, a converted warehouse imbued with the spirit of time repurposed, she was greeted by the melodic notes of a jazz ensemble playing somewhere nearby. Inside, the Innovare representatives awaited, figures of authority carved from ambition and insight, each a titan in their own right. The atmosphere hummed with the gravity of untold futures, a culmination of countless clandestine arrangements. Violet was among them, her presence as captivating as ever, an ally flickering between paradoxes of loyalty and curiosity. Her gaze met Isabella's with an intensity that spoke not just of a shared past, but of a vision yet unvoiced. "Isabella," Violet acknowledged, her voice intertwining with the ambient melodies. "This is not merely a merger," she observed, "but a symphony awaiting its conductor." The room fell under a spell, the architecture bathed in hues of negotiation and philosophy. What could have been a battleground of egos was instead a ballroom, a convergence under the vast expanse of a shared cosmos. Isabella, poised on the precipice of taking ownership of her narrative, reached into her pocket, producing the Kea talisman of intent as enigmatic as it was powerful. Every eye fixated on it, the symbolic weight hanging forcefully in the air, a single instrument for unlocking a treasure trove of possibilities. We come here today not just as leaders, Isabella began, her voice confident yet melodic, but as visionaries ready to craft a legacy that transcends our origins. Her words wove through the room like a thread through woven tapestries, stitching allies into configurations that promised evolution beyond immediate concerns. The key was placed onto the table, reflecting the ambient light of beacon, calling forth consensus from currents previously discordant. As the negotiations unfolded, possibility unfurled its wings, a collective dream coalescing above the tangible shuffle of paper and exchange of ideas. Isabella, attuned to the rhythm of discourse, perceived the undercurrents shifting, aligning intentions with the harmonies of an intricate dance. Yet, as the room seemed to lean into compromise, the clarity of purpose honed by entwined destinies, a new tension mounted, a silence approaching crescendo. Into this delicate balance, a voice stronger than dissent rose, a proposal not of dominance, but symbiosis. Inavari's propositions harmonized with Verona's ambitions, and Isabella turned the key once more, unlocking vistas hitherto unexplored. The room collectively exhaled, the narrative seizing a transformative beat where the protagonist discovers agency and shapes destiny with a precision transcending foresight. As the event culminated, Isabella stood with the echoes of her pioneering ancestors. She had become the architect of her own story, reimagining the boundaries of legacy while reshaping history. Her eyes met Violet's across the room, an understanding passing between them as they took the first steps toward a unified future stitched by ambition and vision. As the grand doors opened to embrace gold dust twilight, she pondered the unseen pathways yet to unfold. The city lay spread out before her, a vibrant tapestry of potential as elusive as it was captivating, a reflection of possibility bound not by conquest, but by collaboration. Her heart swelled with triumph, a quiet pride nestled within her chest, the momentum of winds shifting fortune upon its featherlight promise. The air whispered of promises sealed, and with one final glance at the expanse stretching infinitely ahead, Isabella discerned the beginning etched along the horizon. Cliffhanger. In the glow of the lamplight, a rustler figure cloaked in obscurity, bearing the weight of innumerable stories yet unwritten.